Hello children, welcome back to Nagesh Karasgi Orchid School channel. In the last session we have started history lesson number 4, the Mughal Empire. So let us continue with the lesson. Now we read how the Mughals they created their empire. We have read till page number 47. Now we learnt who were the Mughals. Who were the Mughals? The Mughals were the descendants of two great lineages. They from mother's side they were the descendants of Genghis Khan, who was the Mongol ruler who ruled over parts of China and Central Asia, and from father's side they were the successors of Taimur, the ruler of Iran, Iraq, modern day Turkey. Okay, we saw this painting also. Now we learnt about Mughal military campaigns. Now we are going to next page, that is page number 48, Mughal emperors. Table we are going to see. So the major campaigns and events. Let's learn about the Mughal emperors and the year where they conquered. Now first emperor Babur. He is the first person to create Mughal Empire. 1526 defeated Ibrahim Lodi and his Afghan supporters at Panipat. 1527 defeated Rana Sanga, Rajput rulers and allies at Kanua. 1528 defeated Rajputs at Chanderi, established control over Agra and Delhi before his death. Now these are the years from 1526 to 1530. He ruled 4 years. He defeated first Ibrahim Lodi and his Afghan supporters at Panipat, and again he defeated Rana Sanga, then defeated Rajputs at Chanderi and established control over Agra and Delhi before his death. Now Babur's son Humayun. Here two dates are given, like 1530 to 1540 and again 1555 to 1556. Let's learn why the dates are given in this way, the years mentioned. Now Humayun divided his inheritance according to the will of his father. His brothers were each given a province. The ambitions of his brother Mirza Kamran weakened Humayun's cause against Afghan competitors. Sher Khan defeated Humayun at Chos and Kannauj, forcing him to flee to Iran. Now here Humayun, who is the son of Babur, he divided his inheritance equally amongst his brothers. Okay. The ambitions of his brother Mirza Kamran weakened Humayun's cause against Afghan competitors, and Sher Khan defeated Humayun at Chos. Then he was forced to leave to Iran. Humayun went to Iran now. In Iran, Humayun received help from Safavid Shah. He recaptured Delhi in 1555 but died the next year after an accident in this building. This is the building. Now Humayun from 1530 to 1540 he ruled, and his brother himself forced him to leave to Iran, and again he got help from Safavid Shah, and again he recaptured Delhi in 1555, and then only 1 year he ruled. In 1556 he met with an accident and he died. That accident it happened. This is the library which he built. He was very much passionate of reading books. So here an accident took place in the library. He collapsed from the stairs and he died. Now his son Akbar. He is very famous. Akbar, 1556 to 1605 he ruled. Akbar was 13 years old when he became emperor. His reign can be divided into 3 periods. Now it is divided into 3 periods, 1556 to 1570. Akbar became independent of the regent Behram Khan and other members of his domestic staff. Military campaigns were launched against the Suris and other Afghans against the neighboring kingdoms of Malwa and Gondwana, and to suppress the revolt of his half-brother Mirza Hakim and Uzbeks. In 1568, the Sisodia, capital of Chittor, was seized, and in 1569, Ranthambore. So, here is half-brother Mirza Hakim. Half-brother means a step-brother. Like here, Humayun was having wives, many wives, like 1, 2, 3, like any, and one more mother's son, that is half brother, step brother. He revolt is half brother, and in 1568 the Sisodia, capital of Chittor, was seized, and in 1569 Ranthambore. Now second thing is second period, that is 1570 to 1585. Military campaigns in Gujarat were followed by campaigns in the east in Bihar, Bengal and Orissa. These campaigns were complicated by the 1579 to 1580 revolt in support of Mirza Hakim. Now 1585 to 1605, expansion of Akbar's empire. Campaigns were launched in the northwest. Kandahar was seized from Safavids, Kashmir was annexed, as also Kabul after the death of Mirza Hakim. Campaigns in the Deccan started, and Berar, Khandesh and parts of Ahmednagar were annexed. In the last years of his reign, Akbar was distracted by the rebellion of Prince Salim, the future Emperor Jahangir. So, here is own son by the Prince Salim, who is Emperor Jahangir. He was rebelled by son. So, now his rule stopped. These are the years where it is mentioned. Jahangir. Now his son Jahangir, he ruled from 1605 to 1627. Military campaign started by Akbar continued. Now whatever it was started by his father Akbar, those were continued. The Sisodia ruler of Mewar, Amar Singh, accepted Mughal service. Less successful campaigns against the Sikhs, the Ahoms and Ahmednagar followed. Prince Khurram, the future Emperor Shah Jahan, rebelled in the last years of his reign. Now again he is rebelled by his son Shah Jahan, and the efforts of Noor Jahan, means Jahangir's wife, to marginalize him were unsuccessful. It became unimportant to make it proper condition, but it was unsuccessful. So now his son Shah Jahan, Mughal campaigns, he ruled from 1627 to 1658. Mughal campaigns continued in the Deccan under Shah Jahan. The Afghan noble Khan Jahan Lodi rebelled and was defeated. He rebelled but he was defeated. Campaigns were launched against Ahmednagar. The Bundelas were defeated and Orcha seized. In the northwest, the campaign to seize Balkh from Uzbeks was unsuccessful, and Kandahar was lost to the Safavids. In 1632, Ahmednagar was finally annexed and the Bijapur forces sued for peace. So, here Shah Jahan, who is the son of Jahangir, he started to rule. Mughal campaigns were continued here in the Deccan under Shah Jahan. The Afghan noble Khan Jahan Lodi rebelled and he was defeated. Okay, campaigns were launched against Ahmednagar. Now here the Bundelas were defeated and this town, it is Orcha, seized in the northwest. The campaign of seize Balkh from Uzbeks was unsuccessful and Kandahar was lost to Safavids. In 1632, Ahmednagar was finally annexed and the Bijapur forces sued for feast, means they stopped fighting. In 1657 to 1658, there was conflict over succession amongst the Shah Jahan's sons. Now Aurangzeb, 4 sons were there. Aurangzeb was victorious and his 3 brothers including Dara Shuk were killed. Shah Jahan was imprisoned for the rest of his life in Agra. You might be knowing who built Taj Mahal. Taj Mahal is built by Shah Jahan. So his 4 sons, amongst that Aurangzeb, what he did, he killed his 3 brothers and he has imprisoned. He put his own father in prison for the rest of his life in Agra. Now Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb from 1658 to 1707, in the northeast the Ahoms were defeated in 1663 but rebelled again in the 1680s. They were defeated, again they rebelled. Campaigns in the northwest against the Yusuf Zai and the Sikhs were temporarily unsuccessful. Mughal intervention in the succession and internal politics of Rathore Rajputs of Marwar led to their rebellion. So these here Rathore Rajputs, they were rebellion. Now campaigns against the Maratha chieftain Shivaji were initially successful. But Aurangzeb insulted Shivaji, who escaped from Agra, declared himself an independent king and resumed his campaigns against the Mughals. Now he started to conflict with Marathas, where Shivaji, who escaped from Agra, declared himself an independent king. And here Aurangzeb, he could not completely defeat or fight with the Marathas. It was difficult for him. Now what happens, let's see. Prince Akbar rebelled against Aurangzeb and received support from the Marathas and Deccan Sultanate. He finally fled to Safavid Iran. Again he went to Iran. After Akbar's rebellion, Aurangzeb sent armies against the Deccan Sultanates. When Akbar rebelled, Aurangzeb sent his armies against the Deccan Sultanates. Bijapur was annexed in 1685 and Golconda in 1687. From 1698, Aurangzeb personally managed campaigns in the Deccan against the Marathas, who started guerrilla warfare. Aurangzeb also had to face the rebellion in North India of the Sikhs, Jats and Satnamis, in the northwest of the Ahoms and in the Deccan of the Marathas. His death was followed by the succession conflict amongst his sons. There was a conflict among his sons and he died there. What is guerrilla warfare? Here, now this is a Spanish word, okay, very little. War fought by small groups of irregular soldiers. So this was introduced here. In this way, these are the emperors who has established the Mughal Empire. Now let's go to next page. Military campaigns under Akbar and Aurangzeb. You can see here. All the cities we have read. Now Gondwana is here, Berar, Ahmednagar, Chittor, Ajmer, okay, Panipat, Delhi. Now let's go to next topic, that is Mughal traditions of succession. The Mughals did not believe in the rule of primogeniture. You can say it is as primogeniture, where the eldest son inherited his father's estate. Instead, they followed the Mughal and Timurid custom of what it is, copercinary inheritance or division of inheritance amongst all the sons. Follow the highlighted passages in table 1 and note the evidence of rebellions by Mughal princes which do you think is fairer division of inheritance, primogeniture or coerciony? Means primogeniture is what? It is ruled by only the eldest son. The provinces were not given to other sons, and here coerciony is that it is equally divided amongst the sons. So which is fairer? We feel that coerciony is the fairer one. Now Mughal relations with other rulers. Take a look at table 1. Once again you will notice that the Mughal rulers campaigned constantly against the rulers who refused to accept their authority. But as the Mughals became powerful, many other rulers also joined them voluntarily. Means by their own wish they joined the Mughal rulers. The Rajputs are a good example of this. Many of them married their daughters into Mughal families and received high positions, but many resisted as well. Now to get their positions, they had married their daughters in the Mughal families. In this way they got the positions. Who? The Rajputs. They got the positions. Now Mughal marriages with the Rajputs. The mother of Jahangir was as Kachwa princess, daughter of Rajput ruler of Amber, modern day Jaipur. The mother of Shah Jahan was Rathore princess, daughter of Rajput ruler Marwar, Jodhpur. Okay, they started to marry their daughters in the Mughal families so that they will get good positions. Now the Sisodiya Rajputs of Mewar refused to accept Mughal authority for a long time. Now these people, Sisodiya Rajputs, they refused. Once defeated, however, they were honorably treated by the Mughals, given their lands, watan, back as assignments. The careful balance between defeating but not humiliating their opponents enabled the Mughals to extend their influence over many kings and chieftains, but it was difficult to keep this balance all the time. Look at table 1 again. Note that Aurangzeb insulted Shivaji when he came to accept Mughal authority. What was the consequence of this insult? Already we know what happened of this consequence, what had happened. So here once they were defeated, they were honorably again treated by the Mughals. They were given their lands back as assignments, and there was a careful balance, defeating but not humiliating their opponents, not harassing them. Okay, this balance could not kept for a long time. Now let's learn about the term Mansabdars and Jagirdars. As the empire expanded to encompass means to have hold, encompass means to have hold different regions, the Mughals recruited diverse bodies of the people. From a small nucleus to Turkish nobles, Thuranis, they expanded to include Iranians, Indian Muslims, Afghans, Rajputs, Marathas and other groups. Those who joined Mughal service were enrolled as Mansabdars. Now the Mughals started to recruit diverse bodies. They started from Turkish nobles, that is Thuranis, and they expanded to include Iranians, Indian Muslims, Afghans, Rajputs, Marathas and other groups, and they joined the Mughal service and they were enrolled as Mansabdars. The term Mansabdar refers to an individual who holds a Mansab, meaning a position or a rank. What is Mansab? It is a position given or a rank given. It was a grading system used by the Mughals to fix rank, salary and military responsibilities. Rank and salary were determined by the numerical value called Zat. Higher the Zat, the more prestigious was the noble's position in the court and the larger is salary. Now here first they were given their rank, they were paid salary and they were given the military responsibilities. Rank and salary were determined the numerical value called Zat. If they have the higher Zat, the more prestigious they were, okay, in the court. They were having a good position in the court and they were getting a large salary. The Mansabdar's military responsibilities required him to maintain a specified number of Sawar or cavalrymen. The Mansabdar brought his cavalrymen for review, got them registered, their horses branded and then received money to pay them as salary. Now here Mansabdar's military responsibilities required him to maintain a specific number of Sawar or cavalrymen. The Mansabdar brought his cavalrymen for review to show, got them registers and their horses branded. Their horses were branded and then received money to pay them as salary. Mansabdars received their salaries as revenue assignments called Jagirs, which were somewhat like Iktas, but unlike Muktis, most Mansabdars did not actually reside in the administer their Jagirs. They only had rights to revenue of their assignments which was collected for them by their servants, while the now here Zat ranking, nobles with a Zat of 5,000, they gave example, were ranked higher than those of 1,000 in Akbar's reign. There were 29 Mansabdars with a rank of 5,000 Zat. By Aurangzeb's reign, the number of Mansabdars had increased to 79. Okay, from 29 to it increased to 79. Would this have meant more expenditure for the state? Now let us continue this paragraph. See here, they only had rights to revenue of their assignments which was collected from them by their servants, while the Mansabdars themselves served in some other part of the country. In Akbar's reign, these Jagirs were carefully assessed so that their revenues were roughly equal to the salary of the Mansabdar. Okay, in Akbar's rule, these Jagirs were carefully assessed so that their revenues were roughly equal to the salary of Mansabdars. By Aurangzeb's reign, this was no longer the case and the actual revenue collected was often less. Here the balance was there, but in Aurangzeb's rule it was not balancing, no longer the case, and the actual revenue collected was often very less and then the granted sum. There was also a huge increase in the number of Mansabdars. Now Mansabdars also increased and the revenue collected was less, which meant a long wait before they received a Jagir. These and other factors created a shortage in the number of Jagirs. As a result, many Jagirdars tried to extract as much revenue as possible while they had a Jagir. Aurangzeb was unable to control these developments in the last years of his reign and peasantry therefore suffered tremendously. Now he could not balance, so Aurangzeb could not balance and this suffered tremendously, means in a high level it has suffered. Zabt and Zamindari. Now shall I see the pictures here? See, Mansabdar on the march with his Sawars. Now figure 6, details from miniature from Shah Jahan's reign, depicting corruption on his father's administration, a corrupt officer receiving a bribe and a tax collector punishing poor peasants. See here. Now he is receiving, now here they are punishing the poor farmers, peasants. Zabt and Zamindar. The main source of income available to Mughal rulers was tax on the produce of the peasantry. In most places, peasants paid taxes through the rural elites. Okay, that is the headman. the headman or the local chieftain. The Mughals used one term, zamindars, to describe all intermediaries, whether they were local headmen or villagers or powerful chieftains. Now here the main source of income of the Mughal rulers was tax. To collect the tax on the production which peasants were producing. In the most places peasants paid tax through the headman, that is, or the local chieftain. The Mughals used the term zamindars to describe all these, whether they were local headmen or villagers or powerful chieftains. Akbar's revenue minister Todar Mal carried out a careful survey of crop yields, prices and areas cultivated for 10-year period 1570 to 1580. On the basis of this data, tax was fixed on each crop in cash. Each province was divided into revenue circles with its own schedule of revenue rates for individual crops. This revenue system was known as Zabt. It was prevalent in those areas where Mughal administrators could survey the land. Now Akbar's revenue minister, what he did, he carried out a survey that the land, crop yields, prices and area and the cultivation for 10 years. On this basis he fixed the tax on that particular crop. Each province was divided into revenue circles with its own schedule, of revenue rates for individual crops. This revenue system was known as Zabt. So this type of revenue system was known as Zabt. Now it was prevalent in those areas where Mughal administrators could survey the land and keep very careful accounts. It was possible where the accounts were maintained properly. This was not possible in the provinces such as Gujarat and Bengal. Now in some provinces it was not possible because accounts were not maintained. In some areas the zamindars exercised a great deal of power. The exploitation by Mughal administrators could drive them to rebellion. Sometimes zamindars and peasants of the same caste allied in rebelling against the Mughal authority. These peasant revolts challenged the stability of the Mughal empire from the end of the 17th century. So here in some areas the zamindars were exercised a great deal. The exploitation by Mughal administrators could drive them to rebellion. Sometimes zamindars and peasants of the same caste allied in rebelling. They went against, and these peasants revolts challenged the stability. Now this challenged the stability of the Mughal empire. And from the end of the 17th century this has happened. Now Akbarnama, N.A. Akbari. Akbar ordered one of his close friends and countries, Abdul Fazl, to write a history of his reign. Abdul Fazl wrote a 3-volume history of Akbar's reign titled Akbarnama. The first volume dealt with Akbar's ancestors and the second volume recorded the events of the Akbar's reign. The third volume in the N.A. Akbari, it deals with Akbar's administration, household, army, the revenues and the geography of his empire. It also provides rich details about the traditions and the culture of the people living in India. The most interesting aspect about N.A. Akbari is its rich statistical details about things as diverse as crops, yields, prices, wages and revenues. In this way, children, till page 53 we have read the lesson till Akbarnama. In the next session we will continue a closer look Akbar's policies and we will complete the lesson. So you read the lesson till where we have completed. If you have any difficulties you can discuss. Until then, take care. Bye. See you in the next session.